When you are destined to become the first real-life Tony Stark, failing to hold a conversation for longer than 5 minutes can really mess with your enthusiasm and generally leaves you with only one option. Acknowledge that becoming the first Tony Stark might have been a bit overambitious and settle for a more realistic goal, becoming Bruce Wayne. But of course, Mama didn't raise no bitch, and no amount of divorced dad rock could ever get you to wear eyeshadow. So you'd rather just learn how to have a conversation.
You're wearing eye makeup! Fuck you!
Luckily for you, I happen to be somewhat of an expert on the subject. On July 7th of 2016, someone said to me, "See you later, man, it was nice talking to you." The reason for this success was in no small part due to the 3 rules I have for chatting with the chaps, conversing with your contemporaries, or generally bantering with the boys. Here's a testimonial from one of my most satisfied customers.
This is great banter. It really is.
Now, before I tell you the rules, I have to share with you the 3 ingredients to a good conversation. The first ingredient to a good conversation is the gaff ratio. It can be calculated by taking the amount of fucks you give about the other person minus the amount of fucks you give about how well the conversation goes. If the resulting number is less than 0, you enter the Michael-Cera zone. Nothing good ever happens in the Michael-Cera zone. For example, on a first date, you're likely already very interested in the other person, so the first number will be very high, but you're also likely to be terrified of coming across awkward, so the second number will probably be higher, and the conversation will be as dry as she is. Unfortunately, it's impossible to reduce either of these numbers at will, but you can raise them. So the best thing to do in this scenario is lean into your natural curiosity about her and pay more attention, leading to a much more enjoyable Zoom call overall. The second ingredient is common ground. You're going to want to establish this early on. The more you have in common, the bigger the selection of topics becomes. Unfortunately, most people don't have much in common with those who are destined to become the first Tony Stark, so you're going to want to balance inquiring about their interests with your 10-minute monologues about the military-industrial complex. I find a ratio of about 1 to 10 works pretty well for me. The third ingredient to a good conversation is probably the most important: going outside. It's pretty hard to have good conversations when you hardly have conversations at all. And since conversations are something that you learn how to do, you'll never get better at them by learning that something is the case. You have to actually go and have conversations. That's why I'm including one-to-one voice chat rooms in my community where you can practice your conversational skills with other people who are there to do the same. Kind of like Omegle, but without the dicks. But anyway, back to the tutorial, more on that at the end of the video. Conversations aren't something that can be boiled down to solid rules or procedures. With that being said, here are some solid rules on how to have a good conversation. Rule 1. Don't ignore context. Every good conversation begins with a question. For example, how long have you lived in that apartment on Park Road? Now, you might think this is a great start, but when they respond, "Who are you and how do you know where I live?" you'll realize you've made a terrible mistake. Alternatively, if you actually do know the person you're talking to, you can start a conversation with some teasing. For example, "Haha, you snore in your sleep." But when they ask you how you got in their house, you'll realize you've made the same mistake again, ignoring context. Some other examples of ignoring context: asking, "Do you come here often?" to the barista at Starbucks. Asking, "What do you say I buy you a drink?" at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Or leaning in for a handshake with your girlfriend's paralyzed grandmother. I actually did that one. Rule 2. Say what you're thinking. This one might seem quite obvious, but if you're socially awkward, chances are this is the rule you've been breaking. When you really want a conversation to go well, it's easy to say what you think they want to hear, or to say what you think will be good for the conversation. But in both cases, you're probably wrong anyway, so it's better to just say what you're thinking.
Okay, look, why don't you just tell Fletcher that I'm coming, you motherfucker!
For example, say you're on a first date with a huge Marvel fan. You're about to order an Uber to a romantic restaurant and she asks you what you thought of the new Marvel movie. Which response would lead to a more interesting conversation? Option 1, yeah, it was good, I enjoyed it. Or option 2, I almost said I enjoyed it for the sake of the date going well, but to be honest, I stopped watching after Endgame. The downside of choosing option 2 is of course that she might disagree with your opinion, but on the plus side, when she asks you why you thought this was a date, you'll still have enough time to cancel the Uber. Rule 3. Don't try to fill the silences. If you're planning on hanging out with someone for a few hours, no matter how interesting you think you are, chances are they don't want to hear you talk for every single second of it. And while there is a common misconception that silence is awkward, in reality, the only awkward thing about silence is your cringy attempts to fill it.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Right, so what? Yeah. Yeah.
But of course, even if you don't make cringy attempts to fill the silence, the person you're with likely will, in an attempt to get you to talk, in which case just remember you're under no obligation to speak without a lawyer present. And speaking from experience, there's not very many ways to make a police interview less awkward, so it's better to never end up in one to begin with. Which means you'll have to get your life on track, but unfortunately it seems that most of the advice that's given to our generation these days is either from people who don't have what they want out of life, or from people who do and are lying about how they got it. The bottom line is this: finding direction and getting your life on track is hard. We live in a lost generation, and that is why I am starting The Compass. The effect that my videos have had on so many people this far is genuinely a blessing. I only started making these videos a few months ago, and I didn't expect we'd be where we are right now. And I definitely never expected to hear people tell me that I saved them before my 22nd birthday. But monologuing to a camera can only go so far. And I realized that to have the effect that I want to have, I need two things. Firstly, to be able to work on these ideas full time, and secondly, to be able to actually talk to the people that the ideas are affecting. A paid community solves both of these problems. So The Compass is where I'll be talking to members directly and telling them what I would do in their situation, or just generally offering my perspective on their struggles, in hopes of pulling some people out of the pit that I was once in. You'll get access to all of the Compass private channels in the free Discord server, which is where I will be hosting the weekly group calls, and we'll be chatting and sharing resources for making progress in each area of life. That video was about to turn into an advert for a paid community. I already built the community, but last minute I've decided to make it completely free. This way more people will get access to it, and I think in the long run it works out better for everybody if it's built up into something good first, and then I can monetize it at some later date, but I can keep making these videos full time for a while. And so I figured I may as well try and get the Compass into the hands of as many people as possible to get as much feedback as possible and keep iterating until it's something that's really consistent at helping people find direction. I'm going to put on the screen a list of all of the things that were going to be included in the paid community, but are now completely free to anybody who joins the Discord server. I also now have a reading list available if you go to Angelo Summers, spelled SOMERS.com, and sign up for my free newsletter as well that I'm doing, where I'm basically going to be collecting all of the thoughts that I have while I'm scripting and making these videos and reading a lot. And so throughout the week, as these ideas get put on my radar, I'll be putting them on yours, on nav notes, and you get access to my reading list as well. It's not a normal reading list. I took the extra time to collect all of the notes and things and quotes that I had taken down from each of the majority of the books on the list and put them in there, so you get a quick digest of the main points or the main takeaways that I had from the books. But I do recommend you read all of them. I've only put the books in there that have actually helped me live better and change the way that I behave, because information for its own sake is cool, but I think the real creme de la creme of information, of useful information, is information that makes you change your behavior in some positive way or in some way that brings about a positive effect. So all those books are in there. You can sign up on angelosummers.com. And also lots of people have been asking me how I make these videos and what my sort of creative process is. If you want to ask me about that, join the Compass, and I'll be talking to people more one-on-one, especially on the group calls. I'm sure that'll be a big topic of discussion, but on the videos like this where I'm just monologuing to a camera, unfortunately I can only give very general advice, and when it comes to making videos, it's more conversational. People need to ask specific questions so I can give specific solutions. But one piece of general advice I can give and can wholeheartedly recommend at this point is MusicBed. Just after a couple of weeks of using it, MusicBed has already shown me that they have better music than the other ones that I've tried, so I'm going to be sticking with them. And if you want to hear it for yourself, sign up for a free account using the affiliate link I've got in the description. And if you use the code COMPASS, you can get a whole month for free on any annual subscription, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, that's just about it. If you join the Compass, I will see you in about a week when I do my first call and start talking to you guys, because as much as I love the sound of my own voice, unfortunately I can't give great advice when it's super generalized. So yeah, I will meet you in the Compass. How do you end YouTube videos?